Telesco, and I'm from the University of Florida, and Director Pedro Alvarez asked me if I would just, for a few minutes, tell you what we're doing. It so happens, just by coincidence, we are commissioning a new instrument for the GTC this week. So you're actually part of the observing run, whether you know it or not. The instrument is called CanariCam, and we developed it at the University of Florida for the GTC community. It was built completely there and shipped over here, and it's installed on the telescope now, and I had the honor of being able to show some of you the instrument at the telescope itself. I have just a few brief slides to show you. Here's some of you just saw this, but this is the instrument at the nascent focus. It's a thermal infrared instrument that operates out at 10, 20 microns and detects heat radiation from objects in space. Here's the special little camera right here. These are electronics. It's on the nascent rotator, so it rotates as we track objects through the sky. This has to rotate. And we cool the detector to about 9 Kelvin, so it's quite cold. And this just gives you a picture of part of the interior. It's actually on both sides of this interior. And this is just to show you that, it's a relatively simple instrument for what it actually does. It does imaging, it does photometry, it does polarimetry, and a variety of other scientific modes. And it's really an interesting instrument. So we put it on, and just a few days ago we began using it with a fully integrated GTC system. So we're still kind of getting familiar this week with how best to use it and to optimize it. And just to show you something about the kind of data, we got this image. This is of a planetary nebula, very well known. This is not a research quality image. It's merely an image to show you that we can get images, which is the first thing you have to do. This is actually a planetary nebula, which is actually a dead star. And the dead star's core, it's a little cartoon here, the dead star that's left behind is actually the core, the carbon core of the star. And the outer layers have been blown off, and they are ejected out into space, and we're actually seeing dust which has been created, dust particles which have been created in the atmosphere of that dying star and then ejected into space, and they are heated by the radiation from what we call a white dwarf, and they glow, and we can actually see them as heat radiation with our detector. One interesting thing, just kind of philosophically, is these particles are actually the dust particles which will merge with the dust that's already out there and then become part of forming future planetary systems. So this is part of the great cycle in the universe of birth and death, which is really one of the things that fascinates me. But this tells us that this is actually not too bad an instrument that we've got. The conditions weren't perfect. Nevertheless, it shows you that we have a working instrument. To give you some idea of what we're going to be doing, since we're just at the very beginning, and this week we're doing commissioning, we have 3 main programs. We have a team of 30 astronomers from Europe and the United States and Australia, and we're all working together in 3 key areas. These 3 key areas are to understand how planets form. And so this shows you the circumstellar disk that forms around the star, and planets coalesce out of the material, including some of the dust that was formed in these planetary nebulae in previous generations. The dust coalesces and ultimately becomes planets, forms bigger and bigger bodies, which then become planets. And it may follow, we think, a scenario that follows this sequence right here. And what we're going to be doing with CanariCam is investigating several properties, but one of which is we want to be able to look for this kind of structure and then relate that back to theories of planet formation and how those planets coalesce. So that's one of our key areas that we're going to be doing starting, we hope, in just a few weeks. Another area is we have a lot of interest in understanding the properties of very energetic phenomena in space, including supermassive black holes in the centers of galaxies. And what we'll be able to do, this is of course a cartoon, but we're actually able to study what's called the torus and accretion disk around the supermassive black holes. And it's the actual swirling in of the material into the supermassive black holes that gives rise to the kinds of energies that we associate with things called quasars and other active galactic nuclei. So we'll be able to go in and actually, we hope, resolve and get a lot of information about the process of this torus which feeds the black hole. The third area that we're really interested in is, everybody's interested in this, right, is the study of exoplanets. And one of the things that we can do, because we can detect thermal radiation, is we can look for cooler planets farther from the stars than one can expect to see either through scattered light, which is how planets that have been resolved so far are seen, or because they're very close and very hot. We'll actually be able to look for a population that up to this point is not accessible. So that should be really quite interesting. Well, one thing I want to mention is at 7 o'clock this morning we decided as a modest gesture to the very illustrious audience here, we all said we had to do certain things. We had to stop the chopping and nodding of the telescope, which is what we have to do to make it work best. But we moved over to the Terminator of the Moon, and then we actually took a movie spanning the area. This is thermal infrared, and this portion of the Moon is now in shadow, and this is not under non-optimum conditions. But now you're actually seeing, we believe, is a region that somehow spans or is very near where the Apollo 11 landed. So I know it's not very dramatic unless you realize what it actually is.
It looks right to me.
Thank you very much. Anyway, I hope you enjoy your visit. It's a real honor to be here to talk with you, and I hope you enjoy your visit. Thank you.